Now, an oyster is a beautiful thing when served naturally. Of course it is, straight from the shell. But for many people, it may be a little bit strong. And I think it's only right today, here in Coffin Bay, on this windy afternoon, that I do a dozen Coffin Bay oysters. But I'm going to do them 4 different ways. The job, though, really is not about the sauces or the dressing. The job is opening them. So the oysters, take the oyster and in the hinge, and then pop it open, slide your knife along the side into the abductor muscle, cut it open, and there she is. And there's your oyster.
The Pacific oyster here are highly sought after because of their quality, flavour and size. And I'm really excited to be using them straight from the sea.
Our oysters natural is just as they come, but I like to serve them with shallot vinegar. And this is my shallot vinegar. Take a shallot and cut the shallot in half. And then dice the shallot. So you go downwards and then across again. Now the great thing about shallot vinegar is it will last in your fridge for a good couple of weeks, if not 3 weeks. What you are doing is simply pickling an onion.
The shallots go into a sterilised glass bottle and they're ready to be pickled.
Right, now, red wine vinegar, just red wine vinegar. Don't use white wine vinegar, it's too strong.
And I'm ready to start presenting my first lot of oysters on a bed of local pink rock salt.
Traditionally, oysters are being served on salt. It's just so they don't move around the board. As Australia continues to become more and more involved with Asia, Australian food has a lot more Asian flavours. And this one I'm going to do, I think, is really, really lovely.
For the dressing, add both light and dark soy sauce and a spoonful of rice vinegar.
Some mirin, which is a sweet dressing, and then some sake. 3 more oysters to go onto my board, and then we spoon the dressing into them, and then look at that steely grey, that gunmetal grey with that wonderful mirror of black. Our next one is Kilpatrick. Now, Kilpatrick, always done with bacon and always done with Worcestershire sauce. So bacon cut into little lardons.
Heat some oil in a pan and season with pepper and salt and then add the bacon. Oysters Kilpatrick are usually cooked under a grill with the bacon placed on top of the oyster, but this is my cheats version.
3 of my oysters just in the pan and let them sit and warm as the bacon cooks. I'm always going to serve an oyster in the shell, always, because I want people to understand where an oyster comes from. It does come from the shell.
When the oysters are warmed through, add Worcestershire sauce to each one.
Now, I used to think this was a bit of sacrilege, actually, but actually, as a mixed plate, it's not a bad thing at all, because you get different textures and different flavours.
To serve, load up the oysters with lots and lots of smoky bacon.
1, 2, and 3. For my last oyster, a classic Australian, a deep-fried breaded oyster served with crispy parsley. Take your oysters and pop them out of the shell. 1, 2, and 3. Flour. This will go into here. Make sure it's covered in egg. Now, the breadcrumb I'm going to use are panko breadcrumbs, Japanese breadcrumbs. I don't mind what breadcrumb you use.
The oysters go into the pan with very hot oil.
The trick with deep frying is that when something is ready, it simply floats to the top of the oil. So as you can see what's happening now in here, you'll see these oysters now, they're bobbing around in the oil, which means that the actual egg is cooked and the bits on the outside are all cooked nicely. This is the classic Australian garnish with a deep-fried oyster, and that's to take some parsley. Be careful with this bit because it goes get quite rowdy, and you drop it in. It changes colour and it almost turns to seaweed.
The parsley only takes a few seconds and my final oyster dish is ready.
Out come the oysters, and drain them. And there they are, and they look really pretty, and they didn't look very attractive when they first went in. I admit that, but they are now something really, really pretty. Take a little bit of your parsley and then pop your oyster back in the shell.
Now just a couple of finishing touches. Sliced red chilli to the top of the Asian ones and some chopped parsley onto the oysters Kilpatrick.
And then it needs one thing. A couple of decent wedges of lemon our shallot vinegar, spoonful on top. And there you go. A dozen Coffin Bay oysters picked fresh from the sea, served 4 different ways. Shallot vinegar, Asian with soy and mirin, Kilpatrick, and deep fried with deep fried parsley.